Realize that you are never going to truly be able to set boundaries and be okay with setting boundaries until you are okay with the idea of being alone. Hello everybody, my name is Taylor Elizabeth, aka Is It Taylor, and today I'm coming back with another Taylor talk. I haven't done this in a minute, like literally a year, but now I'm seeing all these people coming in and they're finally watching my first video, which is my self-love journey. So if you haven't seen that, please check it out because it's really helpful and it's a good segue into this video, which is talking about boundaries. So let's get into it. I feel like sometimes people get the concept of boundaries wrong. Like I feel like when people talk about boundaries a lot of the time, they're making it seem like a means to control people. And I really want to change that perception or that narrative, because boundaries are not a ways to control people. It's not a ways to say you can and you cannot do this. You know, it's not a way to do that. I think more so, boundaries is just, in a nutshell, self-preservation. It's whatever it is that you need personally to live a happier and more fulfilled life. Actually stating your boundaries actually is the problem that a lot of people find themselves in, because you know, you might be too shy to tell people, or you might be really scared because you might fear people will dislike you. And so during this video, I'm just gonna talk about the misconceptions about boundaries and what I think boundaries actually are, and then at the very, very end, I'm going to tell you how you can start setting boundaries, and kind of like, I'll give you kind of like a blueprint of what I do personally to set my own boundaries for myself. I really think that boundaries goes hand in hand with knowing yourself. Understand that sometimes you're not gonna know what your boundaries are until someone actually crosses them. A way that I have learned to figure out what my boundaries are, because sometimes it really is trial and error. Sometimes you don't even know that you had a boundary until it gets crossed. And what you need to do really is make sure that you are in your body when you're communicating with people, when you are just living your life. And what I mean by that is make sure that you are paying attention to how your body reacts to certain things. I remember whenever I would get off the phone with someone and we would have like a kiki, I guess, like whenever we would just talk about things, talk about other people, when I got off the phone, I would just feel really like gross. Like I would feel depleted, and I didn't understand why I felt that way. I was just like, I don't even know why I feel this way right now. And I had to realize after the fact that every time that I would gossip with someone, I would end up feeling bad later. And that is how I realized one boundary that I had. Make sure that you are paying attention when people interact with you. Do you ever get uncomfortable? And pay attention to what it is that might have been said that made you feel uncomfortable. It's really an important tip in trying to figure out where your boundaries are, because everybody's boundaries are going to be different. Like there is no one size fits all boundary. Of course there are some non-negotiables like abuse. I feel like in general that's a non-negotiable. With other boundaries, a lot of boundaries are very personal. And that's another note that I want to emphasize, is make sure that you are setting boundaries in accordance to how you actually feel. Don't set certain boundaries because someone else has set those boundaries. Someone else says, okay, well, you know, you shouldn't let people do this. I think it's more valuable to pay attention to yourself and pay attention to what it is that makes you feel uncomfortable, so you can really get to know yourself and really be able to have more conviction in your boundaries, because then you can actually attach the boundary with the reason. And when you can attach the boundary to the reason, it just makes it that much easier for you to uphold yourself to that boundary. Next, number 3 is realize that setting boundaries is not selfish. Of course, it is a form of self-preservation, but it's not a selfish act. And I remember I used to really feel like whenever I set a boundary, I would feel like, you know, people are kind of hate me. They're kind of think that I'm doing too much. They're just kind of think this. That all changed once I reevaluated the way that I thought about boundaries. So, oh my god, my beauty blender fell. Once I recognized that setting boundaries is not only just good for me, but it's good for everyone around me. When you are able to set boundaries with people, you are able to develop more healthy and more fulfilling relationships. Have you ever just had someone be super passive aggressive with you? Like they would just make little snide comments and you could tell that maybe you did something that they just truly didn't like, but they didn't know how to express it to you, and so that kind of like built up resentment. Sometimes when we don't set our boundaries with people, it can lead to resentment. That's going to taint their relationship in the long run. Really think about setting boundaries as not only a form of self-love, but also a form of loving the people around you, making sure those connections stay safe and stay, healthy. Recognize, and I think that's gonna be my next point. No one can read your mind. They are not going to be able to know your boundaries unless you tell them. Never assume that people know anything. And this is why actually communicating your boundaries is very important, because sometimes people violate your boundaries and they don't even realize it. And that's why you kind of need to do that maintenance of telling people, okay, that really didn't make me comfortable. And I'm gonna get more into exactly how to kind of formulate that and how to say it in a way that respects yourself, but also is kind to the other person. Yeah, don't expect anyone to know what your boundaries are without you actually explicitly communicating that to them. The next tip that I have is understand that all you have is you at the end of the day. And I'm not saying that you're just alone in this world, but I'm saying that sometimes we don't value the people who are never even going to leave us. So sometimes we are the worst to the people who are closest to us, including ourselves. We were born alone, we're gonna die alone. Would you rather live knowing, okay, I honored myself because I have to be with me at the end of the day, not somebody else? So are you going to take the time to honor yourself, even if it makes somebody else uncomfortable? Sometimes when we kind of get into people pleasing, especially like as empathic people, we can get into this mode where we are not taking our own health into consideration or our own feelings into consideration because we want to make everybody else happy. And I feel like that's a really bad trope that has been in the media. I mean, I think there's a lot of bad tropes in the media. I think a bad trope in the media is martyrism and how that is a good thing. It's not good to be a martyr. It's not good to constantly degrade and disrespect and disregard yourself in order to please other people. Well, if it makes you uncomfortable, know at the end of the day, I got me. So am I gonna go home feeling bad with myself, about myself? Or am I gonna stand up for myself and maybe possibly lose someone, but be able to maintain my integrity at the end of the day? People come and go, but you are always gonna be with you. So make sure that you are respecting yourself and make sure that whatever you do, you are doing it because you genuinely wanna do it and not because it's gonna make someone else happy. The next thing that I'm gonna mention is understand as well that there are explicit boundaries and implicit boundaries. And I don't even know if that's like a real term, but I'm pretty much making it up. So implicit boundaries are boundaries that you have within yourself that you don't necessarily have to tell other people. And those boundaries can be, you don't like to go to certain places, you don't want to be around certain types of people, you don't want to put certain types of substances into your body. Keep in mind that boundaries isn't just something that you should communicate with other people, it's also something that you should be able to communicate with yourself. I don't want to be around that, I don't want to consume that, I don't want that type of energy around me, I don't want to work in that type of environment. Keep that in mind for yourself. This one's gonna be a little hard, but we'll get through it. Realize that when you start setting boundaries, you might lose certain people. But on the flip side, you might be able to gain certain people in your life as well who are even better than those people that you lost. Sometimes we have people in our lives who we've allowed to disrespect us for so long that they are used to disrespecting you at this point. And sometimes they are the hardest people to come out and set those boundaries to, just because there's been so much history and they've done this thing so many times that it's become normal. Remember that it is never too late to start setting boundaries, and it is okay if you have a boundary that comes up today that wasn't there yesterday. Boundaries sometimes are constantly changing and evolving. It's okay to be like, you know what, I know I allowed this in the past, but right now I'm saying that this is no longer okay with me. The good thing about setting boundaries with people who might have already had a history of breaking your boundaries in the past is when you set it now, how they react is going to determine whether or not you want to move on with a friendship with this person. Long term, you are really going to want people who respect you and respect your boundaries. So people who truly care about you, if you really say that something bothers you, they should be able to be understanding of that, because they shouldn't want to hurt you. Of course, there's a way that you go about it as well. Of course, if you go about things in certain ways, people might naturally get defensive, and I'm kind of talk about that toward the end as well. But yeah, don't be afraid to set boundaries with people who you haven't set boundaries with before, because there's no time to start like the present. Oh, and this is a really harsh reality that I needed to come to terms with in order to really get comfortable setting boundaries. So I hope that you're ready for this one. Realize that you are never going to truly be able to set boundaries and be okay with setting boundaries until you are okay with the idea of being alone. Sometimes the reality is we don't want to set boundaries because we are afraid of people leaving us, or we are afraid of people not liking us. That comes from a sense of like codependency, a sense of people pleasing, and it all kind of stems from a similar thing, is we don't want to be left alone. Until we're comfortable with the idea of being alone, we're not going to be able to feel comfortable speaking up for ourselves or setting boundaries, because we will, instead of valuing ourselves, we will value those relationships, or we will value those people's opinions of us more. I swear, when you are comfortable being alone, just the act of setting boundaries becomes so much easier. It flows so much better. There's a different energy behind it, you know? So really ask yourself before you start setting boundaries, am I okay with the thought of being alone? Or do I really rely on other people to make me feel whole or happy? When you do certain things with yourself, when you say certain things about yourself, your body is always listening. It's watching how you treat it. It's watching what you say about it. So even if setting a boundary feels uncomfortable, internally you are building up your self-esteem. That's you saying, I am more important than this situation. My well-being is more important than this situation. I am important enough and precious enough to stand up for myself in this situation. That was it. Okay, so now this is part 2. So part 2 of how to set boundaries and how to handle people who continuously cross them. So what I do is I put it into 4 steps, essentially. So the first step is acknowledging the boundary that was crossed, or acknowledging the problem. That's the first step, just like kind of like rehab. The second step is acknowledge how what was done made you feel, just so it becomes more of an I statement and you're not putting all that pressure on the other person. 3, tell them what may need to happen if that thing continues to happen. And then the 4th one is acknowledge how much that person and that relationship means to you, just because you kind of want to end it off on kind of a high note, kind of a more positive note. So I'm just going to kind of give you examples. So the first one is acknowledge what was done. So let's say, like, I don't like people cursing at me. I'll say, hey, you know, I really don't like being cursed at. That's acknowledging the boundary that was just crossed. The second one, it really just makes me feel disrespected, and it just makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like it. Boom, that's taking accountability for my own feelings. 3 And this is really, it might only be if it happens again, but I'm gonna still put it in here. Acknowledge what might need to happen if it happens again. So honestly, if you continue to curse at me, I'm going to have to leave because I really just can't be around this kind of energy. And the fourth one is acknowledge how much they mean to you. Honestly, you are so close to me. I love spending time with you. I love our company, and I don't want anything to jeopardize that. And I feel like this flow makes it extremely clear what your boundary is, what has been crossed. It's very straight to the point, it's very assertive, but it's still giving that tonality of, I really care about you. Make sure that when you are doing this, you're looking them straight in the eye. You're saying this with conviction, you're saying this with confidence, you're saying this in a way that shows, I am comfortable enough with you to bring this to your attention, and I know that you are strong enough to receive what I'm about to say. There's something about when people come to you directly and tell you something instead of kind of beating around the bush that shows a level of respect, not only for yourself, but also for them. So be direct, be concise, and realize that when you do assert your boundaries, it doesn't have to be aggressive, it just has to be assertive. It has to be clear, and it can still be loving. The last thing that I'm going to say is make sure that when you are setting these boundaries, that you do not fold on them. Do not compromise your boundaries, because then people are going to stop taking your boundaries seriously. So let's say in that situation, I was just like, okay, you know, I really don't like being cursed at, and if it continues to happen, I'm gonna have to remove myself. If it were to continue to happen, I would have to leave, because that's me respecting my boundary. That is me making it clear that when I say I'm going to do something, when I say this means something to me, it really does mean that. The worst thing that you can do is set a boundary and then not follow through on whatever it is that you said, because like I said, people are not going to take you seriously. No one's going to respect you unless you respect yourself. But yes, that has been the look. I hope you enjoyed getting ready with me. Yeah, I'm going to hopefully make some more videos like this soon, because I just kind of like the dynamic of just me getting ready, talking to you all. It just kind of feels really personal, and I kind of hope that you guys like it too. And I'm just gonna leave off with, you are worthy of being treated well. You're worthy of every amount of effort that you're putting into yourself right now to start this self-love journey and really develop this cultivated sense of unshakable love and confidence. Let me know how things go. I want to hear about it. Let me know what you think about this video below, any comments you might have. I enjoy getting ready with you, so I'll talk to you later. Bye. I'm sorry, I'm literally so bad at like multitasking. Am I coming in with too much energy? Hold on, let me show. Okay, hello everybody, my name is